I'm so excited to introduce him. He is has an amazing bio. Unfortunately, he has a really, not unfortunately, he does have a long list of accomplishments, but unfortunately, I'll only be able to list a few right here. He is the longest serving president in the 148-year history of Paul Quinn College. During his nearly 14 years of leadership, Paul Quinn has become a nationally regarded institution for its efforts to remake higher education to serve the needs of under-resourced students and their communities. He has been named one of the world's 50 greatest leaders by Fortune magazine. Recently, former President George W. Bush and the George W. Bush Presidential Center awarded Dr. Sorrell the Bush Institute Trailblazer Citation. He's the only three-time recipient of the HBCU Male President of the Year Award. He won Higher Education's President of the Year Award as recognized by Education Dive. Time magazine listed Dr. Sorrell as one of the 31 people changing the South. And Washington Monthly magazine identified him as one of America's 10 most innovative college presidents. So as you can see, you are in for a great time right now, and I look forward to hearing what he has to share with us today. So at this time, please help me welcome Dr. Michael J. Sorrell. Oh, you are muted, Dr. Sorrell.
There we go. Thank you very much, Sandra. I appreciate the kind introduction. Let me apologize for the mistake in scheduling. I think whatever happened, I am very, very sorry for keeping people waiting. I hope everyone is having a wonderful, wonderful day. You know, these, I guess it's not post-COVID times, but post-extreme COVID times have all of us scrambling a little bit to try and regain control of our schedule and our lives. And, you know, as I sat this morning at the parent-teacher conferences with my son's teacher, you know, I'm really reminded of just how disruptive this has been on students at all levels, right? I mean, we tend to be preoccupied with the college students, but as we look at the impact that this has had on students at all ages, we have to realize that we are living through a traumatic experience, an experience that really, really has shaken us society-wise at our foundational core. And understanding that and going through that is something that for all of us, we need grace, we need patience, and we need perspective. And so, you know, I was intrigued when you all extended this kind invitation to speak with you, this idea about retaining students in the midst of a pandemic, right? And on one level, I'm not even sure that's the right question to ask, right? And I'm sensitive to it because we have this conversation on my campus. And just to give you a bit of background so you understand the full context of the remarks that I'm going to talk about, I want to give you a sense of how we view the pandemic and how we have engaged. When things became apparent that it was going to go very, very poorly, we were one of the first schools to send our students home. We made a decision, a very conscious decision, that we wanted to be very, very safe. And that safety was going to take precedence for us over everything. And we got to that place because, you know, in part, my former career was that of a crisis manager. And when you are in crisis management, you never stop being a crisis manager, right? Like, it's never a moment where you say, oh, I'm no longer in crisis management, so I can breathe easily, I can sleep through the night. You always have one eye open, one ear open. And I had a friend of mine who had the misfortune of being an early victim of the virus. He did business in China. He came back with it. He and I had conversations where he shared with me what he was seeing, and I became worried. And then I read a book called The Fifth Risk by Michael Lewis. And it's not one of his bestsellers or more popular books, but it talked about how the Trump administration is dismantling federal agencies and really, really complicated structures that have been used to help safeguard us in case of just emergencies and things that that created national security risk in many different ways. And they were dismantling them, some because of their politics, some because of their naivete, some of just their distrust. But the reality of it was we were left more vulnerable than we ever were at any time. And so my friend comes back from China sick. He talks about this illness over there. I recognize that we as a country are more vulnerable. And I started asking myself, what happens if this virus strikes us? And we started having these conversations internally at the college. And I tasked my staff with going about talking to other colleges and universities around the country to figure out what were they doing. And it turns out people weren't doing very much, right? People didn't really think about this in that context. And so as such, we started preparing for the disruption. We started talking to our board, but we started having a very different conversation. And we started asking ourselves, once it became evident that we were going to have to send the students home, the question became, when would we bring them back? And we game planned for 3 different possible scenarios. One was, it's just a blip and we can bring everybody back in the fall. One is, we need to be a bit more cautious, let's bring people back in January. And then what if we don't bring people back till we have a vaccine and we have reliable testing, and that turns out that we can't do that until August. And then we asked ourselves, if we don't bring students back till August, what can we become? Right? Like, what can we become? Can we become a completely different institution simply by adhering to our values? And our values have always been very simple. We have an institutional ethos. It's we over me. The needs of a community supersede the wants of an individual. This means you do not get to be selfish. You do not get to live in a land of illusion, right? We believe in the 4 L's of Quinite leadership. Lead places better than you found them. Live a life that matters, lead from wherever you are, and love something greater than yourself. All of these things speak to this need to be transformational leaders, people who can look beyond the now, right? We ask ourselves, and we have a character test, choose the harder right over the easier wrong without apparent regard to self-interest. And again, this speaks to selfishness. This speaks to being a leader but making selfish decisions. The inability to put the best interest of your community, your charge, over that of your own or a very narrow set of interests. And then we have a race or a color test or a color creed, where we tell people you can be our kind and not be our color, which some people always find is a bit interesting because we're a historically Black college, right? And so they think that we're all Black all the time. Now, we are plenty Black. Let's not get it twisted, all right? Let's not get confused. But historically Black colleges have never been all Black, right? It was never possible for them to be all Black. When historically Black colleges were created, they were created because the country faced an issue it had never faced before, and I would argue no one's ever faced before. How do you take 4 million enslaved people and transition them into full citizenship in a land that was deeply invested in preventing them from gaining wealth, property, or even their humanity, right? So you needed institutions to do that. That's what historically Black colleges did. But there were always white teachers. There were always Native American students. There were always Hispanic students. There were always others at the door. And so we believe in a family environment. Now, I tell you all that because you need to understand it because of how we responded to this crisis. We made a decision early on that we weren't going to bring people back until we had a vaccine, and that was probably going to be 18 months. And we recognized that what people were going to go through was extreme trauma. The country was going through extreme trauma. And as such, as institutions of higher education, we thought that we should play a bigger role in this, that we shouldn't be institutions that were so much more concerned with the business of higher ed that we lost sight of the people in higher ed. When we sent our students home, we sent them home with laptops. We sent them home with Wi-Fi connections. We sent them home with resources, not just to engage in their education, but to help manage their lives. We sent them home with telehealth options that helped them take care of their bodies and their minds, because we knew this was going to be difficult, because this was difficult for all of us, right? And so, you know, the conversation that we had first was, how are you? Before you are a student, you are an individual that we love, that we care for. How are you? And that conversation, that understanding, that belief that there was a higher concern, that mattered to our students. And it mattered to our students because they got them to understand that we love you whether you are here or whether you aren't here. That we have bought into not just this singular moment in time when you are enrolled in Paul Quinn or you're on campus at Paul Quinn, but we're invested in you forever. So it meant that we changed everything that we did. We started out doing Instagram lives and doing Facebook lives and all of those things. And then we progressed to very personal one-on-one phone calls and all of these things, because we understood that when you have students who are working full-time and beyond, when you have students that can't come to class because they're waiting tables or they're taking classes in storage rooms because that's the time that they have, that they need a different kind of institution, a different type of engagement. And when you understand that, when you know that, when that's who you are investing in being, then it leads you to what I want to talk about today. I want to talk about in this moment that we are going to share together. I want to talk about, does any of this really matter? Right? Does any of this really matter? Are we who we are supposed to be? Are we institutions of care and concern? Or are we cold business entities that see our students as bottom line indicators? And let me ask you this question again. Does any of this really matter? And who are we, and are we who we are supposed to be? Higher education was founded for a very unique purpose, not the one that it's serving today. Originally, higher education was founded for the landed gentry, their sons, and their clergy. The landed gentry, AKA the wealthy in this country, their sons, because their daughters weren't allowed to go to college, and their clergy, because folks wanted to make sure that they had learned ministers. That's who the original institutions were founded to serve. Those original institutions, many of whom have gone on to become the Ivy League, Harvard, Yale, Columbia, Princeton. Right now, Rutgers is also one of the originals, William and Mary, right? But they were founded for those express purposes. And then something happened. America began to evolve. It began to change. And circumstances dictated that we have more people have the opportunity to learn. But we were always supposed to be institutions that understood that our value to this nation was to help prepare its citizens for the challenges of the day. We were always supposed to respond to the challenges of the day, which meant that we were supposed to be institutions that showed great care and concern to the people who came through our doors. And people who came through our doors began to change as time went on. When slavery ended, We created the historically Black colleges and universities because circumstances dictated that we needed institutions that could provide wraparound services to a collection of individuals that were never considered college students when things began. Then you have the land grant institutions that really were founded because people realized that we needed people who were learned in farming, in technology, in all the things that blossoming countries were going to need. We saw the GI Bill provide educational opportunities for the military as they came home from war. And that changed the middle class. That changed this country. We saw all women's colleges be created because we began to appreciate the value in educating women and what that meant for our families and for our society. We have always evolved to meet the needs of the day. That is one of the beauties of higher education. But evolving to meet the needs of the day means that you must evolve to meet the needs of the students of the day. We must evolve to meet the people who are coming through our doors. And you meet the people who come through your doors by rising to this challenge. To rise to this challenge, we must become the administrators and staff and faculty that students need now. It's okay if none of us contemplated educating students in post-trauma, in post-pandemic trauma. How could you, right? There were no classes in school. When I was getting my doctorate at Penn, we didn't have a class on post-pandemic higher education. I'm sure there are going to be some now, but there weren't any then, and that's okay. That's okay. We continue to adapt. But in order to adapt, in order to care for our students the way that we need to care for them, we have to let go. We have to let go of the fear that has encompassed so many of us for so long, right? The fear of change. Typically, people who go into education are a lot like people who go into the practice of law. They tend to be risk-averse people. They like predictability. They like consistency. They like stability. And that is great, right? That is great. And for the record, that is no shade. That is no criticism. I am both a lawyer and an educator. So by professional selection, I would seem to be risk-averse, change-averse. I am not. Okay, I am not. I was miscast as an attorney and might very well be miscast as an educator because I embrace change, right? I think it is incredible. I think that we have to do it. But I also believe in continuously challenging oneself to be the very best that they can be. And I believe in students. And I believe that students' best interests matter more than anything else. I am more in love with my students than I am with the higher ed traditions. And I think our students need that. I think they respond to that. And so here we are, all of us traumatized, trying to love on students who are also traumatized. How exactly are the traumatized supposed to love the traumatized? And let me apologize right now if for some of you this is an uncomfortable moment, because I'm positive all of us have not impacted on this own traumas. As much as I talk about it, I'm positive I haven't completely unpacked all of mine. But let's give a moment to our own personal traumas. Let's acknowledge the fact that for a significant period of time, we were made to fear personal interactions, that we were made to fear our colleagues, that in many respects, we were made to fear our families because we didn't know if simple family engagement was going to produce illness. We didn't know that if we hugged our wives or our husbands or our children after they had been outside of our sight lines, that they might be carrying the virus. Living that way has consequences. Consequences that we will be living with for perhaps the rest of our lives. And so some of our professions forced us back into the classroom on the college campus before we were comfortable doing so. And I know some of us bought into this political idea of science. That's BS. Science is science, okay? I don't subscribe to that. Politics can be politics. Science can be science. You don't have to share my political beliefs to share a foundational understanding and appreciation of science, okay? We're not all gonna vote for the same people, okay? But there are some fundamental truths, all right? This virus represented a fundamental truth. It attacked our immune systems, it got us sick, and it did so by close human contact. Those are the lives of people who work in residential education. Our students couldn't stay in a bubble. Our students couldn't just all of a sudden magically stop living. Because many of your students are like mine. 85 to 90% of my students are Pell Grant students. What are you gonna do to tell people who already don't make enough money to stay at home in a pandemic, not go to work at fast food restaurants, not go to work at convenience stores, not go to work at places where people have job opportunities for them so they do not starve, so their families don't starve? Okay, so they gotta go do those things. And then they're still trying to get their education. So if we're honest with ourselves, we didn't want to be in classrooms with folks that we couldn't gauge where they had been. That scared us. So we became afraid of our students. The way we handled it at Paul Quinn, we kept everyone home so people could manage what they could manage, so they could reduce the anxiety and the stress in their lives. Now, there were some consequences for that. Our students, many of whom had difficult lives, had to go back to those difficult lives, which is why we constructed a living environment for some of the students who had the most difficult environment. And they stayed in apartments that we secured so that they could be safe. It's tough. It's incredibly tough. But we made those decisions. So now, when we look up and we realize that we were made to fear what once was the normalcy of our lives, we're now asked to immediately go back into that. And that's tough. That's tough because we all have lost loved ones or people we knew to this. Many of us have been sick. My family caught COVID, right? We caught COVID because we had a bad neighbor, right? Like, let's just call it what it is. My wife had a car accident in the alley. The neighbor comes out. The neighbor tells her she has COVID. 2 days later, my wife has COVID. So now, needless to say, we don't spend much time talking to those neighbors, right? Right or wrong, okay? Right or wrong. That relationship dynamic is forever going to be changed, okay? Thankfully, all of us were fine, right? We had a mild version, and we were okay, but so many people weren't. But my simple example of sharing with you how those dynamics change, our dynamics with people who live, yards, 50 yards, 25, whatever it is away from us, will never be the same. Our lives will never be the same. And so our students come back to us. And for many institutions, the question wasn't, how are you? It was, how many of you can we get back? Right? Because we need them back for our revenue. Now, we told ourselves lots of different stories. We said, online learning is inferior to in-person learning. Really? Because there are a lot of schools out there that brought students back to campus, to live on campus, that the students took classes remotely from their dorm rooms. So if we can figure out how to do everything online, we can't figure out how to successfully teach online. Let me be clear, I prefer learning in person. I prefer teaching in person. But I also recognize when things have changed or they're different, right? I mean, it is important for us to, sorry, I was reading some of the comments in the chat. It's important for us to manage through all of this. So our students come back and we realize that things have changed. And how do we communicate to them that we put their needs first, when in some cases, we didn't put their needs first? We as institutions behaved selfishly, for whatever reason it was. And let me be clear, not every institution did. Many institutions did an amazing job of bringing people back, keeping them safe, but many institutions did not. And we're all still living with the same issues. What do we do with a society that we haven't always been good stewards of, that we have taken advantage of their trust in our sector? We charge an awful lot of money for people to go to school. And we act as if we don't know that people will be paying that back for maybe the entirety of their lives. That entire families have borrowed money to put kids through school. And that because we peddled this idea that you're not an elite institution unless you're charging premium dollars. That the better your institution is, the more money you have to charge. And so all of a sudden, when people looked up and said, I borrowed $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 for undergrad, and it's restricted so many of my life options, well, and people are mad at us about that because we didn't tell them the truth. We didn't tell them the truth. So when they question whether or not education is valuable, whether it's relevant, whether it can help them accomplish their goals, and then we want to come back and say, of course it can. Your life outcomes are better if you get a college degree. But people say, well, wait a minute, you're the same people that have charged me an awful lot of money that my grandparents have taken out Parent Plus loans. My parents have taken out Parent Plus loans. I've maxed out my loan to go to school, and I'm scared. And then you told me in-person learning was the only valid way of learning. You got me back during the pandemic, and I'm scared. And I don't trust you with my well-being. I don't trust you to do right by me. So how are we going to reestablish that trust? How are we going to reestablish that faith? Let me tell you how we're going to do that. And let me tell you what I think the path forward for higher education must look like. 3 ways. Number 1, we're going to get back by telling people the truth, by being human, by being honest, by saying sometimes we don't know all the answers. And sometimes we're trying to figure this out just like you are. But we are inextricably tied together, and working together, we can get to this place, right? We can get to this place. We can get to a place where we go forward. But we can't get forward by pretending that the truth is a lie. So number 1, tell the truth. Number 2, lose your God complex, right? Lose your God complex. It is heady stuff being a college president. So I can only imagine the love and adoration it feels being a college professor or being a full-time college professor, because I do teach a class, but that's different than what full-time professors are doing. So sometimes having people sit in our midst and listen to us and hang on our every word and have a need to believe that we are authorities makes us feel great, makes us feel important, makes us in some respects feel infallible. We are not infallible. There is no permanent solution to any problem, right? There aren't. So the best we can do is evolve and be committed to evolving. And to evolve means you have to be vulnerable. It means that you have to be able to say to people, I don't know. I don't know if what we did yesterday makes sense for tomorrow. I don't know if yesterday is the best ticket for our next being greater than our now. So we won't have sacred cows. We're going to open this thing up and we're going to look at things differently. I believe in a very interesting model of shared governance. I believe that students should be equal participants, students and their families should be equal participants in shared governance. I don't think the faculty gets a disproportionate vote, right? I think we all are in this together. I think it is a third, actually, I think it's a quarter, a quarter, a quarter. I think the administration has a chunk of this. And the administration also in the board. I think faculty has a chunk of this. I think students and their families have a chunk of this. And then I think the employers have a chunk of this, right? Because we are in, this is a business. We have customers. The students and their families and our employers are our customers. So we have a shared responsibility to work collaboratively together. Great question, Joanne. I consider faculty and staff to be one and the same, right? We don't make the distinction here, and that is not to be disrespectful to anyone. It is simply to acknowledge that all of us play a role. When I started at Paul Quinn, I'm going to go off on a tangent here, so I'm just going to warn you. We had a 1% graduation rate and a 33% retention rate. I can't explain that to you. I don't understand. I don't know how you can do that. I don't know how you can lose 99% of your students. I do not know, right? But what I can tell you is it is a hard lift, right? We're in the process now, like we got to the mid-20s and that felt like a Herculean lift. This current cohort is projected to finish around 40%. And you know, people want to throw balloons and have parades. I am stressed out over why we can't get to 90%, right? So, but what I can tell you is the path forward from 1 to 40 came on the back of this simple belief, is that thank you, Katerina. We are all teachers. That's exactly where I was going, right? We are all teachers. We are all deeply invested in what happens with our students. If you work in student life, you actually may impact a student more than any one professor, because you actually may have them in your presence a greater length of time. So why shouldn't you be given the same respect as a faculty member? And that's what we did. And you know what? It hasn't bothered our faculty members, and it has meant the world to our staff, right? I just don't think any one of us is better than any other of us, right? I just don't, right? As a president, I am privileged to work shoulder to shoulder with people I love and respect and honor. It's why I sent them home, so that they could be safe and in the presence of their families during the pandemic. It's why we make the decisions we make, right? And so when we are in touch with our humanity, when we are in touch with our humility, we can let go of our God complex, right? And when we let go of our God complex, we can get to be who we are supposed to be and who our institutions are supposed to be. So we're gonna have to tell the truth, and we're gonna have to lose our God complex. But the third piece is this. Smile. And that may seem incredibly simplistic. That may seem anti-intellectual, right? But let me tell you why I'm telling you to smile. Because when you smile, you tap into a place of joy. All of us need more joy in our lives right now. All of us need to remember why we are here. We need to acknowledge why we are here. We need to understand that we are going to screw lots of things up, right? We're gonna mix up stuff. We're gonna stumble, but our stumbles don't have to become falls. We don't have to take ourselves so seriously and be so stiff, right? Find the joy in your life. The small, when I tell you to smile, what I'm really saying to you is find the joy in your life. Students respond to joy. They respond to knowing they're in a place filled with happiness. I tell my students, I love you. I tell my staff, I love you. Right? And let me be clear, not in the creepy way. Like, I'm not trying to get a couple extra dates. Right? I'm happily married. I have wonderful kids. Right? My point is, I love you in the way that you should love people who you spend your time with. Right? Listen, let me tell you something about leadership that I have come to fully understand and embrace. You better not lead people you can't love and you don't love. You have to lead, you have to love the people you lead. Because if you don't love them, you will never make the sacrifices necessary to be the kind of leader that they deserve. And you won't. And you have to know that. And so the here and the now, the reality of all of our lives is our students will respond to the truth. Our students will respond to humanity, to humility, to people who think they are one of them. You have to be honest with people. Tell them when you messed up. Tell them how you stumbled, right? Be human. They love you for it. And then find the joy in your everyday life and smile, right? Bring that joy into the school environment, right? Who would you rather work with? Someone who comes to work every day like this? Or someone who comes to work every day and says, how are you? How was your weekend? How's your family? Are things good? Are you okay? Like, give me the person who has joy any and every day, right? All of it. So, listen, here's the thing. I'm not going to talk you into oblivion because I've really said all that I've come to say, right? You want to be great retention officers? Be great people first, right? Be great people first. If you're great people, you will tell the truth. You will be humble. You will have humility. And you will have joy. Because greatness comes from a place that we're responding to hope. We're responding to a challenge, but we have hope. And people with joy have hope. And we want our students to come back to us. We have to give them a reason to come back to us. But we have to acknowledge their present circumstances in order to bring them back. And I am thankful every day that this is how the Lord has chosen for me to spend my time. I don't get everything right. I make plenty of mistakes, and I own it. And when I mess up, I tell my staff I messed up. I tell my 6-year-old, my 11-year-old that I mess up. My wife tends to tell me when I mess up, so I don't always have to own that part of it. Just kidding, I tell her too. All right? But I'm thankful. I'm thankful for this opportunity to share with you. And I think we all should be like, why are we here if we can't be hopeful? Why are we here if we can't be honest? Why are we here if we can't be humble? And why are we here if it doesn't make us happy? So thank you for your time. Thank you for tuning in the most impersonal of venues possible, a Zoom conversation. And hopefully you found a way to find meaning in my words. But let me thank you for what you do every day, because you show up for people that need you. Like, you show up in ways that are impacting lives, that make people better. And maybe you aren't told thank you enough. Maybe you aren't made to feel welcome enough. Maybe you aren't made to feel important enough. You are. You are welcome. You are important. You are needed. You are necessary. And you are making a difference in the lives of people who need you. And when you do that, people come back.